This is the Infinity Summit Group. Truth, passion, success.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Infinity Summit Group podcast. Today is March 15th, 2023. We got a special guest on today. I'm Noah.
Xavier.
Logan.
And we got a special guest on, Ryan.
Yes, hi, how are you?
You want to
Good.
intro yourself? Anything you like to say? Catchphrases, anything?
No.
Hi.
Yeah, hi.
That's perfect.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, awesome. So we brought you in today. We've been hoping to get, we've been working on getting business owners and stuff like that on, and trying to really show and tell the average person on how to start their life and be successful financially, and kind of create their own basis for wealth. And you were just talking a little bit about what you do on the day-to-day basis currently, with being on the computer and whatnots. You want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. I don't spend all my time doing it, but it's kind of like race car driving. You got to be super focused.
Mm-hmm.
When you try trading, like on a day trading basis, I've been trading futures lately.
And for the listeners, can you explain what futures are?
Yeah, so
basics.
you have your standard equities, which is traded on the stock market. Like Apple or whatever. I look at any tradable. Anything is tradable, right?
Yeah.
And most people, when they think of a stock, they think of a company, and they think of earnings and dividends and quarterly reports, all that good stuff, which is great. You're investing in a company, and you want to make sure your investment's in a safe, sound. But I look at all trading as an instrument. And it doesn't matter what symbol it is. It can be gold, it can be corn, it can be Apple. They all are traded up and down. Mm-hmm. Who wants to buy it or sell it? And if you've got more buyers, the price goes up. If you got more sellers, the price goes down. And somebody knows that on the backside and allows that, to more or less, probably algorithms now do majority of it. But they know when there's more buy orders or more sell orders, and that's what pushes stuff up and down. And so it's really impossible to time everything. But we all have something in common. We all have a chart to look at, and those charts have patterns. And when you stare at the screen for, 15, 20 years watching these things tick up and down, you get pretty good at seeing where there's fake outs and how there's, there's always a loser on the other side of the trade. If someone's winning, someone else is losing. And, stocks, options, futures, there's Forex, which is commodities. It all either goes up or down. And they all call it something different, whether it's a call, a put, a buy or sell, an open or a close. It's up or down. Is how I explain it the easiest. Either you bet it goes up or you bet it goes down. But timing's key. There's time frames, like long term, short terms. You can have some oddball event happen, like a bank failure, right? And then the stock market just crashes that day, and then 2 days later it's right back up to where it was at, like it was no major thing. I've been doing that. I've been trying to teach my son how to do a little investing, and so that's why I've been trading lately. And so he gets out of school in a couple days, and we're going to spend some time and just educate him how the market works, because he's been wanting to trade stocks, and I'm just like, well, do you even know how? And he's like, no, I just want to buy something, and I'm like, well, you're probably going to lose money, because most traders lose money, and I've had my fair share of wins and fair share of losses, and I try to protect my money. And stocks, they're not my favorite. I do own stocks in longer term things. I look for companies like that are up and coming, that could possibly, like for instance, right now I'm invested into two companies. One is what is it? It's a nuclear power energy plant. That's it's not a plant. It's a device that stores energy. It's kind of like a battery, but it produces it as. I don't know the whole concept to it, but I feel like an energy problem could be in the future with the way things are and with fossil fuels and the EV push and all that stuff. So I'm looking for an up and coming, something that's gonna. It's hard to, like, if you go by Amazon now, it's priced accordingly. Where if you'd have bought it 15 years ago, it wasn't priced accordingly because it wasn't what it is. So if you try to get ahead of the curve, there's a guy named Cody Willard that I follow, and he runs a hedge fund, and he's always about looking 10,000 days ahead. So that's a long time frame. So he wants to buy something now that in 10,000 days is going to be really wealthy or really successful. And that's a long-term time frame. That's a long-term investment. But you could still hold that theory on short-term investments. What's going to be good in the next 5 years? Like, for instance, Zoom. Zoom was, whenever the pandemic hit, the stock went crazy, and everybody's like, oh, everyone's got to own Zoom. But it's just an app, that it doesn't even really generate a whole lot of money in the beginning. They were giving free trials out, and just like anything, you in the tech space, it can 1,000 times in 1 year. Where in like a retail doesn't really do that. You got to get more brick and mortars and more product and employees and all that. But tech can, it can go to 25,000% in 10 years just because it's scalable. Mm-hmm. So, when I look in investing, there's just I try to tell people the best thing you can do for yourself when you start off is to start creating buckets. And this is something I learned about 10 years ago. By a financial guy telling me, look, we're going to make some buckets and you need to diversify. And what makes you feel comfortable? Like if you feel like you need to have physical cash, then start making a bucket with physical cash. If you don't trust the market, or if you don't trust yourself to spend it, if you think you're going to spend it, then maybe put it into something that's more long-term, like gold or silver, where you put it in a physical asset and it just sits there and just looks pretty, but doesn't really do a whole lot for you, but it makes you feel cozy and warm on the inside.
Mm-hmm. So 10 years ago, were you doing the physical bucket?
So what I started with is I was kind of ahead of the game. So when my story was I was broke. I met my wife and my girlfriend at the time. We were both not financially, we actually blew out sprinklers in Boise for a winter, and we made like $10,000 in a month just working our tails off, blowing out sprinklers at I think they were charging $30 a whack. So, and we were doing like 10, 12 homes a day, and we made a grip load of cash in a short amount of time, and that kind of got us jump started. And she went into finance and home loans, and I ended up in a garage door place. And anyway, we make a long story short, we started with nothing, and we were both in debt. I was more debt than she was because I didn't know how to manage money. I thought money was just easy. It just would come to me, and it will come to you if you create that. But it doesn't just come freely always, I guess, so to speak, in the beginning. So back to your question about like 10 years ago, what was I doing? Let's see, I was probably reinvesting in the business. That was the number one thing. And I would always tell anybody that you're your best asset. You are. You're your best asset. You might have employees, you might own a business, you might sell a product, but someone's got to market that product. Someone's got to push that product through to the finish line to make the sales happen, and that's you. And so you're ultimately investing in yourself. That's where the majority of the money goes. And then once you start getting to a point where more money starts coming in than you're actually spending, and you're living within your means, it's not saying living poorly or not taking a vacation, but when money starts to stack up in the bank account, then you got to figure out where to put it. And for me, I tried the stock market. I started in 2006.
It's a hard time to start.
Yeah, I did really well, and I was like, wow, this is easy. And then, 6 months later, I was out of money, and like, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
It was a rough go. And I was trading options then, and I was new to trading options. I didn't know how they worked. And if you don't know how an option works, you're basically buying something at a future price, and if it doesn't get to that price, it becomes worthless. But if it does get to that price and it goes above that price, it can double, triple, quadruple your money. So there's a lot of bang for your buck trying to gamble, so to speak, where the stock price is going to end on a certain date. And basically, you're just betting against your peers or institutions or people smarter than you that have computers that are twice as fast as yours that can and have billions of dollars. So it's an interesting game. You're a little guy in a big pond.
Don't start with options.
Yeah. I've took a trading class. I give a plug for who is it? It's Rick Ackerman. Yeah, he has this method called the hidden pivot method, and he has this course. It's like a 4-hour course. You watch it, and he's been trading for 30 years, and he basically gives you entry positions to take with very little risk. If it works, you make good money. If it doesn't, you get stopped out, and you lose very little. So it's set up that way to protect yourself. Anyway, I took that class, and he says in there that he hasn't ever met a successful option trader, and he's been doing it 30 years. And you might have success for 3 months, but try to do that for 10 years straight. It just doesn't happen. You just can't. It's not possible.
Gotcha. No, yeah. I did some studying in like stocks, options, all that jazz, and found you've got 2 strategies that I found are like the more safe ones. And that's leaps options and then the wheel strategy. I don't know if you've heard of it, but we don't need to go into that too much. For me, I don't know. My listeners may.
There's
not
a
be.
lot of strategies where they play and they're hoping for a lot of momentum. You can play both sides, and you hope for a big move one way, and you get stopped out on the one that's going against you, and you hope that big move gets you 100-200%, and you lose only 50 over here. That's one strategy. But if it doesn't move at all, they both kind of just decay because time is against you in options. And there was one time I had $23 in the account, and I think I took it up to around $50,000 off of $23 playing options.
Wow.
Just because, and it was like a 3-week span. I still have the chart. It was on Robinhood. But it was during the time I think Trump was in office and the market was just running just straight up, and so you would just keep buying short-term, same-day expiration money calls, and they expire today. So if they're not at the price today, you get zero. And so if you're putting $5,000 or $10,000 at something like that, it could turn into $100,000 or it turns into zero. And a lot of times it turns into zero.
Was this pre or post COVID? Because I know post-COVID we had a huge run-up.
That was pre-COVID. And so come COVID, I call my broker and I tell him, I have other people manage money for me because I can't manage everything. And some people are smarter than me, in that. I just let them do it. And they're great. Money managers are great. The problem about them is that they don't get paid if you tell them to sell. Your money goes to the sidelines and they don't get a commission of that. They want your money in the market so they can get their percentage. And so when you sell, they don't make money. And so, why would they want you to sell ever? They just hold. And come COVID, I called my advisor up and I kind of seen COVID, what was going to happen before. I'm always looking into the future. That's one thing I could say back as a bucket is just be looking forward, looking always in life on everything to be ahead of the curve, because the guy who's ahead of the curve usually, runs the fastest lap type of thing. You want to be up there winning, right? And it's not always about winning, but I called him, told him I want to get out of the market, and he says, no, you don't. Even if we have a downturn, it'll come back. It always does. And I'm like, well, no, I don't want out. And he's like, well, anyway, make a long story short, I had to call again a second time. He was out of town, and it was his assistant. I just said, listen, sell everything. You're fired. And and here's where I want my money. And my dad gave me that advice. He gave me that advice. He says, look, it's your money. You're paying these people to manage your money. It's your choice. If you don't feel comfortable with them, if they're telling you, like you feel giving you bad advice, fire them. It's like there's a dime a dozen out there. And so this was March, January, February. I think it was end of January is when I sold, which is right when things started to get a little dicey. And I was watching Twitter and seeing what was going on in other countries with COVID and seeing the shortage issues and what's just all the crazy stuff that's happening. So I was getting prepared. Like, we have a business, and so I had N95 masks already ordered, and I had already been and gotten toilet paper. I'd already done all that stuff. I went supply shopped in January knowing that there could be a problem, and that's just looking ahead and, knowing your current events and what's going on. And just using the strategy of anticipation of what might happen. And worst case scenario is I have some masks, extra masks, and they were cheap too. It's like, and they were readily available. I even bought hazmat suits because I didn't know what I didn't know what to expect.
That's
So
perfect.
So now I have 7 hazmat suits in my house if anything ever gets crazy.
There you go.
Yeah, I do like to prepare for the future, and so that helps. But the number one thing is invest in yourself, and then after you find something that you're passionate about, you've got to figure out how to make it work financially for you. And everybody measures success differently. Especially in finance, because Warren Buffett, he's a multi-billionaire, and he still eats his McDonald's every morning. He lives in the same home he's lived in for 30 years, and he has more money than he's just. You have a problem when you make a lot of money. You either have to find out how to give it away, spend it, or get taxed on it and give it back to the government. So money, when you start making big money, a lot of people just give it away in the end because it's the government's going to take it if they don't. And so why not put it to a good cause? And a lot of good foundations and charities are done that way. But there's other people that retire comfortably, and they don't even have $50,000 in the bank, and that's just okay. They're okay with that, and they feel like they had a successful life. So everyone has that different level, and it's very challenging to know when to stop. You can always want more.
Mm-hmm. But how would you get that much money and not want to use it to have an enjoyable life? Because like you're saying, he still eats McDonald's and stuff like that, living in the same house. Then what's the point of even getting rich?
Sure, you could ask him that. It'd be a good question. I mean, he's in his 90s too. Him and his partner, I think Charlie Munger, I think's his name. He's in his 90s. They're old and they're still kicking and still making a crap load of money. Their biggest position is Apple. That's the number one stock they own is Apple, and it's just Apple's gone straight up. If you look at that chart, it's just gone straight up forever. And that guy Cody Willard I mentioned earlier, he bought Apple when it was under $1, and he still owns the same shares because he buys shares and he holds them. He doesn't. It's kind of like if you got to look at if you're doing stocks, you kind of got to look at it as a bank account. I'm making nothing in my bank account. Over here in my stock account, it's just like a bank account, but I want to make just a little bit more. And if you're safe and you be patient, then stocks works. People just want to make a bunch of money every day. I mean, right? That sounds easy, but that's not how it works. You got to wait for setups to happen. You got to, I'll not make a trade and I'll stare at the screen for 30 minutes waiting for a trade to develop in front of my eyes, because if I don't, then I missed a trade and I'm on the wrong side of it. Now I'm losing money going the wrong way, and if I would have just waited, I would have seen the setup happen. So there's patience in that. But, stocks, I'm not a big believer in putting your money in stocks, bonds. I mean, you can put them in bonds. Bonds, if you don't know, bonds are basically just interest-bearing certificates, more or less. Somebody's borrowing the money from you, and government sells a T-bond, and that's the most secure one supposedly in the world. To me, I feel like real estate's probably the best thing you can do, and there's a timing thing on that as well. You should always have some dry powder, if you've heard that word before. Have some dry powder on the sidelines. It's very difficult to do. People are greedy. They want to get it all in, want to make sure they maximize their profit. But dry powder is great. You should always have dry powder, a nice big load if possible. Because if something happens, say like the housing crisis happened years ago when the financial thing and houses, I mean, I went across the street at my house out here in Harriman, and the neighbor was selling the house for $265, and I walked through it and I'm like, there's no way I'd pay that for that, and now it's like $600,000-$700,000, and it's just like, so the timing is key there. If you buy it now, you might not be worth that much in the future, but most likely housing will hold up due to inflation. So real estate is a good, I would say, a good first egg to get started. I owned a rental home, and me and my wife owned a home in Harriman. And as we built the business, the first thing I realized is if I want to retire, I need to have my house paid off, because I watched my parents retire and still have a mortgage, and it's not that expensive. But I'm like, who wants a mortgage when you're retired?
No.
Yeah. And so the number one goal should get your house paid off. That should be your first bucket, in my opinion. Get it paid off. Even if you got to sacrifice, you don't go to vacation this year, and you don't buy the jet ski this year. You save up a little bit extra. If you can't pay it off and you don't make a lot of money, I would recommend just making extra payments. If you make double payments, I think it shortens the life of the loan 6 years, something like that.
And it saves you so much interest.
Right. And I hate interest. Like, people want me to finance, and I don't finance anything. I mean, I use interest. I use finance for credit cards. That's it. I use only credit cards. I don't use debit cards. I get the points. I pay it off. I probably pay my credit card bill 4 or 5 times a month. I like zero debt. Zero debt is the key. And then once you get to zero debt, for me, it's like you asked a question, like, how do you not want to go spend it all? It's a different mindset. To be honest with you, you kind of lose track with what the value of a dollar is, because when you start dealing with millions of dollars, $10 isn't that much.
Yeah.
But to someone that's making $10 an hour, it's a lot. It's an hour's worth of their time. So it's all a matter of the perspective. And so when someone says that costs $1,000, you're like, oh, it's expensive. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take 2. It's it's just the price isn't a problem with money. And he obviously likes his McDonald's. This is why he goes there.
Yeah.
Creature of habit.
Do what you love. I mean,
Sure.
if it works for you, right?
So how would you measure your success?
Yeah. So that's tough too. And I built a home the last couple of years, and I spent a lot of time dealing with that and a lot of headache. And I'm on the very end of that now. And to measure success is I think if you can love yourself and be honest with yourself, I think that is success. If you can do that, you feel good about yourself where you're at. Because if you're in a bad spot, whether it's relationship or it's whatever something's bad, law, you got in trouble with the law or something, if you're not comfortable with who you are and being with yourself, there's challenges, I think, to that. So, because what is it, 100 million? Do I need 200 million? Do I need $1 billion? What am I going to do with $1 billion? I can buy a nice yacht now and sail around the world. But is that really what I want to do? It doesn't align with what I have going on in my life. I really wanted this boat, and I went and, I'm going to get this boat. And I had my daughter pass away last year, and I was going to get this boat, and she loved boating, and I told her before she passed away, I'm going to get that boat, and now I don't want that boat. And so I'm like, maybe when I get older, but I felt like I needed this boat to make me feel complete and happy, when in all reality, this is a big boat. I'm not going to use it that much. It costs a lot of money to store and maintain. Why do I need that? And so I find myself to be pretty simple. I guess I'm not simple, but I like taking risks. I like doing exciting things. I like to get out and enjoy life, for sure. That would be more success than money. Money just brings you comfort, I think, to some extent, but it also stresses you out because you got to figure out what to do with it. How do you invest it in the right investment so you don't lose money? There's a lot of challenges when you get money, and then the government wants half of it, and that's the other thing. So, like when someone says it's going to cost you $1 million to buy this property, I immediately think, okay, it's going to cost me $2 million because the government's taking half of it, and $2 million is going to take me this amount of months, and that's kind of how I measure money, is by time and what the item is. And I like to spend money on real estate. I like to spend money traveling, and I like to spend money on good food. But when it comes to, like, I don't know, hobbies or anything, or boating, like the boat, for example, I could easily, go get that boat and probably finance it and pay it off quickly. Like, I'm a believer in financing things if you're going to pay it off in like 3 months. And there's some incentive, like we'll give you this incentive if you use our financing. Mm-hmm. But I just didn't feel like it was money well spent. Because when you come from nothing, I didn't come from nothing, but there was a time in my life where I was broke and debt pretty bad, bankrupt style. I just, I went to college, and the first thing I did is I got 5 credit cards, and I maxed all 5 of them out right away. And then I went and got two part-time jobs and was a college student, paying debt and getting enslaved in the system.
A couple questions on that.
Sure.
What were you going to college for? And did you ever end up declaring bankruptcy? And if you didn't, how did you get out of that situation?
Sure, yeah. So went to Arizona State for 2 years. I was going for business. Took some basic classes, took some communication classes, and then I realized, I was working those 2 jobs. I was in debt, and I was starting to get to the point where money was a problem. I didn't have enough, and I was spending more than I was making, and I didn't get the concept of money. I wasn't taught that by school or my parents. My dad did. My dad tried to teach me that, but I was going to do what I wanted. And
That's how it goes.
yeah, and it's great because I learned such good lessons. So I didn't graduate. Into my sophomore year, I decided to drop out, and I moved up to Idaho and took a sales job. And it's the best thing I could ever done for myself. Gave me a lot of good experience with people at a young age. I was 19, 20-ish, doing sales with adults, and I was just this kid who knew nothing and thought he knew everything. Mm-hmm. And that was great. To the bankruptcy question, I took on a lot of debt, and I got to the point to where I just stopped paying them for a while, and they kept bugging me, and they went to collections, and I didn't want to do bankruptcy. I just something moral. I feel morally obligated to pay my debt, and what I ended up doing is once I started making some money with the business, I started calling them all and negotiating payments to get it all done. So I ended up paying them all back. And they had already ruined my credit. So when they would call and say nasty things to me, I'm like, I don't care. You already ruined my credit. What are you going to do? You can't force me. I don't have it. You know? And then once I started making money and was able to start saving money, I took care of all those debts, and I learned a good lesson. And debt is great for certain things, but it's really not good for a majority of things. Leveraging is a good way. You can get into debt. I'm not opposed to that strategy at all. A lot of people make a lot of money leveraging things. I just have a personal preference I feel complete when my house is paid off, when I own my car. That to me is somewhat of a measure of success that we were talking about earlier, where you feel complete that I don't owe anybody anything. When I get a bill, I usually pay it that same day within 10 minutes of arriving home, a stamp on it and ready to go out. I don't want to have a bill. I don't want to owe anybody anything. That's a little bit much probably, but it's what I do because I don't want to, I don't want to forget anybody. I'm a believer that you pay for what you, when I go and perform a service, I expect to be paid on the spot.
Yeah.
I got bills to pay just like all these other people. So I try to always pay my bills on time. I don't mind prepaying. Like I'll prepay the gas company, not at my new house. My new house gas, I got a pool and the heater is just killing me on the gas always running. But I used to get like, an $80 bill, right, from Questar. Mm-hmm. I would just pay them $500 on the check, and then I wouldn't. Come wintertime, they'd send me a couple $100 bills, and then I didn't have to waste a stamp or pay a bill. They just put it as credit, so it was just easier to do, out of mind. Just things like that. Another thing I did last year, or when COVID happened, I listen to Peter Schiff sometimes. He's a little crazy, but he mentioned to go buy dry goods. Lots of them. Like I went and bought, I think, 15 dishwasher discs at Costco at the price 2 years ago versus what the price is today. Mm-hmm. Bought a bunch of shampoo and soap, toothpaste, toothbrushes, deodorant, all the stuff that you use when inflation's going up. I mean, and I can afford to pay the new price. It's not like it's killing me. But I'm also why wouldn't you want them? I mean, if I can get them cheaper and I'm going to use them and I have the money, might as well take that dollar bill that's losing value in my eyes. I feel like they just continuously be printed, and they're not worth what they. I mean, I went into the store the other day. They were 2 candy bars for $5. Like,
Oh, yeah.
what the heck is that?
It's robbery, yeah.
Ridiculous.
I don't go to the grocery store or the gas station. I try to avoid any gas station food. I'll get water there, and I used to get it all the time whenever I was working.
It's so expensive.
Yeah, and when I seen that, I was just like, holy cow, gum, $1.89. You know, it was like 50 cents for some bubble yum back in the day. You know, that's 4 times the cost. So, you know, if you think about it now, if it's doing it here now in today's day and age, worse than it's, you know, ever, or they could say the 80s was worse, but it happened in the 80s, it's happening now. What do you think is going to be happening in the future? Either inflation is going to continue to be a problem for who knows how long, or they'll have to come up with some other system. And you know, the Federal Reserve was created in 1913 to prevent banks from failing. That was the whole purpose of the Fed. And the reason that they created that is they couldn't have the banks couldn't do the runs. They were having a lot of bank failures and running the bank, and the money system wasn't working. The United States didn't have the communication system and the rail system and everything like it does now. So they're like, we can't let banks fail because it screws up whole communities. And ever since then, we know they'll do whatever it takes. Whether they got to print it, they got to make up some story, they got to tell you whatever you want to hear to make everybody happy. They're going to do whatever they can to make sure that the banks don't fail. Because it's, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, I believe that you're enslaved into the banking system through the federal government. Whenever you're born, they give you a Social Security number. You get a Social Security number. Now you're property of the government, and you owe us whatever you make. We want our cut, and I feel that's not a free society, in my choice, my opinion. I feel, I love my country. I'm not real happy with the leadership of our country. I wish I could do more there, but I know that if I try and go there, you just get shot down. I mean, you pretty much have to fall in line, follow orders, or we'll make sure you're removed, type of thing. It's not what people want to go there and get things changed, and there's a lot of good things that do happen. I don't want to just talk negatively always about the government, but I do feel like that they're not there for me and you like they say they're there for me and you. They take a lot from everybody, and in little return, I feel they squander and make bad choices. And they do what lines their pocket, because a lot of the politicians that have been there a long time, they're all millionaires, multimillionaires. Like, there's a couple of them are $200 million. Like, how do you make that as a congressperson?
Not insider trading.
It's not. That goes back to the trading thing. Like the trading, I truly believe the trading is rigged and it's manipulated. I know the silver and gold it's absolutely happening. Oil is another one. It's a total speculative market. They say we're cutting barrels of oil and we have the lowest amount we've ever had, and oil goes down. It's like, that's fishy. Like, that's not supply and demand. The markets don't do supply and demand anymore. They do whatever people push the button up or down on. Yeah. That's just basically it. Who's betting up or who's betting down. And so it's turned into a casino, and it is what it is on that side of things. So the market, to me, there's risk involved. Bonds are a little bit less risky, but you got to believe in something, and the almighty dollar is the best thing out there. And so even though it does lose value, I feel like they almost just make us want to spend it. And it's kind of because if back when their interest rates were low, you couldn't put it in the bank and make any money, so you had to spend it. And where did most people spend it? They spend it in the stock market when they got all the free money from COVID and everything. Where else do you put it? You get no interest on your money. Real estate prices were going up. Everything was going up. People were buying everything, and so just things were out of control, and it messed up the economic model too. Nothing. You can't go by old charts and old information because nobody's been through what we went through. We printed, we doubled our money supply in a 2-year time frame. We shut down our economy. We let people say, hey, just stay at home and we'll call it work. That you don't have productivity there. And when there's no productivity, you have no goods being produced, and so then it creates a shortage problem, and the shortage problem is a supply and demand problem, and a supply and demand problem, and a logistic problem. Then prices just, whoosh. And I feel like a lot of companies raise prices to make sure that all their bottom lines were hit, and everybody survived the storm, which is great. But the problem is now is those prices haven't come down, and a lot of the reasons it doesn't come down is because people don't want to work. They want to, not that they don't want to work. They want to work. They just want to work 4 days a week, and they need time off. And it's not the old school mentality of working the grind 68-hour weeks that a lot of people had to do back in the day to make ends meet. They want to work less, and I'm all for that. I think we should all work less. Everybody should work less. Everybody should spend more time doing what they enjoy, whether it's family, whether it's trading stocks, whatever, you name it. You just, whatever you enjoy doing, do it. If you like to get out in nature, I recommend that. That's always good. But life's too short, to not do what you enjoy. I read an article today about someone that wrote a book, and I'm always trying to read. Reading's another good thing. If you have time, read as much as you can. I enjoy reading. I learn a lot of things. Anyway, it was about someone that dealt with hospice, with people dying, and she wrote a book about what people say, and majority of it is that I wish I didn't work 60 hours a week, and these are people in their 40s that are dying, and they didn't realize that they would die when they're 40. They thought they'd live till they're 80, and they worked all these hours all their life, and they didn't do what they wanted to do because they thought they needed to be working. So it's definitely, definitely put yourself first, invest in yourself first. Make sure you take the time for yourself, even if you say you can't afford it. Yeah, you can afford it, because you ain't taking nothing with you, and you're not guaranteed tomorrow. So you got the time right now, if you can make it.
Yeah.
You gotta tell yourself.
Yeah.
The question is, what if that all happens like you're saying, productivity's down, but because that happened all over the U.S., everybody's realizing they don't want to work anymore, or they want to work a lot less and take more time to themselves. Then everything falls because everybody does it at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. So. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know.
No. Yeah. So that's a huge problem, because so what they do to combat that is they raise prices. If you're getting less productivity, and which means you're getting less jobs complete, which means you're making less money. Yeah. The only way to combat that problem is to charge more.
Yeah.
And then the employee also wants more. He wants more. They're not. So when I first started out, $10 an hour was like, that's a good wage. If you could get cash $10 an hour, you're okay with that. Now I don't know how you can do it under 20, 25. I mean, and I don't, it's been a while since I've been in that realm of having to I paid my house off when I was 36. My first house I paid off, and it took me 4 years. Once I committed, I'm going to pay this house off. It took me 4 years. I paid $10,000 a month at it, and once I started making a little bit more, I started socking $25,000 at it, and slowly it got paid off. The wife hated it because we didn't have any money, but the money was just gone into a bank account and drawn hardly any percent. Where the bank, they're charging 3% or 4% or whatever we were. I think it was a 4% loan. To me, if I'm paying that, I just I get everything shouldn't sit in the bank. It should all be applied to that. And so I don't know where I was going with that, but to your question, yeah, it causes a lot of challenges completely across the board, which messes up data. That the government goes off. They use the CPI number, and it's so dated. Everything in the government is dated, if you think about it. If you really do, they've updated some things, but before COVID, I buy a lot of trucks for my business, and before COVID, nobody would do anything online. I had to fly in, or I had to airmail everything back and forth. Now everything's done DocuSign. So there's some good things that came from COVID, where people had to upgrade their systems, and state law says that we can't do that. Well, change the damn law. That's stupid. That shit's from 1970 when there was no internet.
It takes them fucking forever to do anything.
Right.
Anything.
Well, and that's the problem is that nobody holds them accountable. Like, if the government was a business, it would have been bankrupt a long time ago. Yep. It is already bankrupt. I mean, they spend more than they bring in, and they pay, interest. The interest they pay is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, the amount of money that they pay to borrow money that they've already spent, and they still can't balance the budget and live within their means of that, which is there's no accountability. And in a business, you have to have accountability, because if there's no accountability and you don't make the money, then you go out of business. No one there to bail them out. And I think that the changing of certain things from old to new, like for instance, did you know that in 1970 they created the $10,000 cash rule for going through country to country? If you carry more
I've heard about that. I didn't know when it was, though.
So it was in the 70s. It happened when they were having the problem of Pablo Escobar time. All that cocaine was coming up through Florida and from Colombia through Central America, and so people would just jump on a plane and fly over with some coke all on their clothing, and then fly back with all the money in their clothing, what they're wearing. They had suits and stuff. And anyway, so they made this rule: if you travel with more than $10,000, you have to declare it. If you don't declare it, then it's a crime, and you have to deal with immigration, and they probably fine you and court date type something stupid like that. But
I've seen things where they just confiscate the money.
Sure.
Like,
They're probably confiscating that money for sure. Yeah, or right, yeah.
Yeah.
Just give me the 10-year and we'll let you go.
Yeah.
Or give me half of it and I'll let you go with the other half. Yes, but that law is dated. In 1970 you could buy 3 Volkswagen Bugs for $10,000. Fast forward to 2022, you can't even buy a car for $10,000 anymore, not even one. And that law is still $10,000. $10,000 used to be a lot of money. Now $10,000 really isn't a lot of money. That's a couple mortgage payments. So it's just little things like that the government, they just don't stay up to. Business needs to be fresh, needs to be creative, needs to be adaptive to the environment and change all around it. And the more successful you are doing that, the more you're going to thrive. You're going to be ahead of your competition. You're going to stand out more. Because ultimately, everybody ends up selling themselves. Whether you sell donuts or you sell tires or you sell insurance, everybody is selling their self. And some jobs are easier than others. My dad used to say, the guy at McDonald's, he's a salesman, but he's not a very good salesman. Because everybody walks up to the counter and says, hey, I'll take a number 1. And he says, okay. And then the sale happens, right? There's a sale going on there. Mm-hmm. But it's an easy sell. So everybody sells something. And the more you believe in yourself, the more confident. Be an expert in your field, whatever it is. Be better than the competition. And, a lot of good things I did is I looked at people that were more successful than me. I talked to people that were more successful than me. And I would look at what they're doing. Well, if they're doing it, it should work for them. It should work for me. And so I would try to better what they were doing in every aspect. And when I go to different markets, I look at different companies. I try to, like I said, I try to read a lot and stay ahead of the curve, so you can always just be ahead of the curve. And that's the one thing is you just got to be prepared. And like the government, they're not prepared. No one even cares. They just, it's a 9-to-5 job. Come 5 o'clock, they check out, and who cares if an American citizen has a huge problem and they need something done right now? It doesn't matter. It's we're closed. Where as a business owner, I'd be absolutely, I'll help you. How can I help you? I want to create a relationship with that person, because they'll have a great experience with me, and they'll call me for the rest of their life whenever they have a problem.
Or tell their friends.
Huh?
I said, and tell their friends.
And they'll tell their friends, and they'll recommend their mom, and they'll do all that good stuff. So you always got to be selling, and you always put your best foot forward in every situation where you go above and beyond. Excuse me.
Okay, I've got a question here for you. So you've done investments, right? And you've owned a business, right? Or at least created a business. What do you say is better, or are they just different? Because creating a business, that's a lot of time and a lot of stress. I'm sure
a lot of investment.
Yeah, and just a lot of work. But investment, it's still a lot of work. But stock trading, right? It's just clicking.
Yeah. And there's some luck involved. There's timing. I mean, it's my son said I want to trade stocks for a living, Dad. I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds like a fun job, son.
Good luck.
Yeah. Everybody wants to do that. He says, well, what could go wrong, right? You just buy it, and if you just hold on to it, and eventually it'll go up. And I'm like, or it doesn't, and it just keeps going down, and it keeps going down, and keeps going down, because nobody wants to buy your stock. So if you can get in early, the key about stock investing is getting in early. You get in early when everybody hears about it and hears the hype. It's kind of like Bitcoin. Back in the Thanksgiving, 5 years ago, everybody wanted to get in and get some Bitcoin, and it just shot right up, right? And it shot right up because everybody was buying. And then once all those buyers were exhausted, then there's no more buyers. And so you got to invest into something that somebody else is going to want. And I'm not saying Bitcoin's a bad investment. We could talk a little Bitcoin. I don't know if you guys.
We can talk a little bit of Bitcoin, yeah.
I used to love Bitcoin. I used to think it was going to be the future, and I still own some, but I'll get deep here. I got hacked probably, what's it been, 4 or 5 months ago, and I got hacked on Facebook. Somebody stole my Facebook account, which is tied to my business account, and I have a lot of contacts on there, and I do business, and I used it to the algorithms to find certain groups and post, and it generated income. So I wanted to get that back, and so I Googled a number. Googled Facebook. I couldn't get it to work on my phone. I Googled this, and sure enough, it was a Facebook website. Everything. I call them up, and it's scammers. I called them. They answered, "Hi, this is so and so. I'm with Facebook, and it's an Indian guy." And he spent 30 minutes verifying my identification. And so I'm like, okay. So I felt like I was actually, talking to a guy at Facebook. They transferred me to another guy. And then they told me that something's happened. There's been a fraudulent sale on the marketplace on Facebook, and it has to do something with your bank account, and so that's why the account's been frozen. That's why you can't get in. We need you to log into these accounts.
Oh no!
And so I'm thinking, okay, this is Facebook telling me I'm gonna get my account back, and he's assuring me that this is very simple. It's a very common problem. They just had it as a total scam, and they got some Bitcoin from me, and I bought what was that? Is a Hedra? No, not a hash. No, there's a device out there that crypto was linking up where you use someone else's router, and I don't know if you guys heard about this, where it's basically if you want to use someone's internet, you can pay them, whatever coin it was called. I forget the name of it.
Hedera Hashgraph.
Yeah, I think that's
Heard
it.
of that one, yeah.
So I went to buy two of those routers, right? Mm-hmm. And I go to their website thinking I'm going to get two of their websites, and they say, well, we only accept Bitcoin because we believe in Bitcoin and the future of Bitcoin, so our only payment is in Bitcoin. So I ordered two of those up. I pay them in Bitcoin, and nothing shows up.
Son of a gun.
Then I go back to look for the website. The website's no longer online, and I don't ever get my devices. And so every time I've dealt with Bitcoin, it's a scam. And I just was reading today, like $270 billion, I believe, either billion or a million, I don't remember which one it was, has been scammed in the United States, Japan, and another country. And I didn't even go and read the article because I'm over Bitcoin. Bitcoin it doesn't work yet. Maybe it'll work in the future, but it doesn't work yet because no one wants it. It's too difficult. And when I got hacked, I can't just send my Bitcoin back. You don't even know who has it. And there's nobody policing it. And so how are people going to put their hard-earned money that pays their mortgage and takes care of their family in Bitcoin that can just get hacked? And you can't, if it disappears, it's like, sorry. And in this process, I had some money staked on another crypto website, crypto.com. They had a God, I can't think of the name of it. A secondary app. It's where it's decentralized, where you own the keys, and for some reason those keys are in my notepad on my phone. They're missing a couple words, and I don't know what they are, and that shit's just locked up. I don't even know how to get it. And I call crypto.com, and they're like, sorry, we can't help you. That's you created it. So I'm like, well, where is it? And they're like, oh, it's there. You got to log in to get it. And I'm just like, well, How is this shit? This shit, you get scammed. You can't get it back. It gets lost. No one can help you. So they got a lot of work to do before the average Joe is just going to put everything into Bitcoin and that be the next payment system.
Oh yeah, it's complicated. All of it. Is
Yeah,
complicated.
and I think they could use the technology. I'm behind the technology 100% of how it works, but they've got a lot of work to do to where it could. I was a believer in Crypto.com because they were going to create a payment system to where you can pay in pretty much any coin, and they'll transfer it to any coin that you want or dollars and put it right in your account. So, for the business, if someone wanted to pay in Bitcoin, which we've accepted it once before, they actually paid in US dollar coin, I think is what they ended up doing. But, I said, sure, I'll take that. Just give it to me. Let's just cash it in, cash it out, pay the fee. I like the fees and the transfer time. If you're in Europe and I'm here and you need $100,000, I can send it to you pretty quickly and at a very affordable rate.
Yeah.
And you can transfer it into whatever you need, the euro or whatever, at an affordable rate. Where if you go to Europe now, it costs you 10% to exchange the euro and 10% to change back to the dollar. So it's like 20% more to change monies when you travel. So I'm like, Bitcoin, this sounds like a good idea for that purpose. So I could see them coming up with something to where they just need to make this easier. Like the wiring process to send money, it's ridiculous. You go into the bank, you fill out the form, they ask you all these questions, they want to know what you're doing. It's like none of your business. It's my money. Who cares? And then maybe an hour or two later, someone gets it, and you're crossing your finger hoping that it gets there, and it usually does, right? I mean, it just seems complicated for today's day and age,
That's why I stopped using it. It was too confusing, and I was like, I don't have time for this right now.
Right. Well, right. And there's always a new update or this or that, and they're coming out with something new, and you just get lost. You guys like, what? I mean, it is complicated, and I still own some in a speculative bucket. I like to have a speculative bucket. But that comes with time, and you can add to that whenever you feel like you've got sufficient in other buckets. And sometimes you'll get to a bucket and you're like, I don't need that bucket anymore, and you'll just sell it out. And you'll roll that bucket into another bucket and do something bigger or spend it or do whatever you want with it. So I feel a good 3 to 4 core buckets in the beginning, and even if you put a dollar bill in one bucket and you put a silver coin in the other bucket, and you put a piece of paper saying I'm going to own this property in this area one day, and it says a vision that you're creating, and these are buckets that you're starting to create, and you just slowly add to them. And depending on how aggressive you are and the desire you have, the sky's the limit. Because I'm a true believer that anything's possible with anyone. I told myself when I was younger that I would be successful. I knew it. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to be successful. I just knew I was going to be successful. I didn't know what. It was just a mindset. And Mike Tyson, Mike Tyson, he's an interesting character. He also, and Evander Holyfield, both were like, I'm going to be great. I'm going to be great. I know it. And this is when they're young. He said, I'm going to be the world champion at 16. I believe Muhammad Ali said that. And I think a couple years later, he was the world champion. So it's all mindset. You put that mindset on, be successful, and you will be. And it's not going to look like you think, though. I didn't think I would be successful repairing garage doors. And it just wasn't. I thought I'd be a lawyer or something, but come to find out, I'm glad I'm not a lawyer.
Now, with the garage doors, I know you worked for a garage door company, but what got you interested in that and got you thinking I could create a business out of this, or we could create a business out of this?
So I was working for another guy and I had been doing some framing up in Idaho when I was as a second job, and I did it for about 6 months. So I had owned a truck, and mechanically inclined was the ad that I answered in the phone book or the newspaper. 2005, 2004, and I was working at America Online, and it was the worst job ever. It's the only job I've ever quit, walked away, didn't even care that I didn't have another job lined up, and I gave them no notice. It was terrible. I hated that job. People would call in and say, I want to cancel my account. And my job was to convince them not to cancel the account that they never set up, that they're paying 3 times on 3 different accounts with 3 different credit cards that their kids put in the disc. And I'm like, nope, sorry, I can't help you. But, my job was to make them not cancel. And I would just give them more free time to use. And you could literally call America Online every month and just get a free month. They would just keep giving it to you because they wanted subscribers. And they wanted subscribers because they knew eventually you'd forget about it and you'd ding their card and they would make income. And, that was their business as a tech business. Like we talked earlier, where you can scale really quickly. That was a company that scaled from small to large and then went bankrupt. Or didn't go bankrupt, but they went away. But back to topic.
What got you into garage doors thinking like this is a good thing to start a business in?
So I left America Online, and I took an ad on the paper, and said mechanically inclined and needed a work truck, and I had that from my previous job. And I went and I started working for a guy named Tyler Woods, and he was an interesting character. I quit after 2 weeks because I couldn't deal with the guy. He was just bipolar and angry, and I'm so thankful that my wife now talked me into going back and just give it a chance. Anyway, another guy bought the franchise a couple months later and fired Tyler and fired the office lady and basically said, you guys are going to run this way, and who wants to be, do the paperwork and kind of manage the office. And I volunteered and I got paid a little bit extra, but after a month or two that happened, and I'm like, this isn't worth an extra $100 a week to drive up here and spend 3 hours and do the inventory, and it's just a lot, and I don't want to do it anymore. So I told him I'd like to get paid more, and I'll step up. I'll take care of your customers. I'll manage your operation here. And he's like, no, I don't have managers. I do this. I own 4 or 5 of these like this. I don't do that. So I said, okay. So that got me thinking, well, hell, I don't need him. And so I went to Carrie, my wife, and we were dating at the time, and I wanted to open a garage door company. And, I used to be an alcoholic, drank a lot, and so I was unpredictable. And that was an interesting, first 10 years of running the business with someone that drinks all the time. And it was stressful. You work all day long and you've got all these things you got to do, and you can't forget about a customer. You can't forget about this has got to happen. Oh, I got to do that tomorrow. And then you got the business side of things. So, the business was running me for sure. So I begged her to open a business, and we did. And so she is a majority owner in the company, and we worked together over the years with Parker. He was a big role. Just because if I couldn't do it, I always needed someone else to do it, and he was always there to do it. And so, we wouldn't be where we're at without the team of people over the years. Even I mean, it's all you guys. You guys have contributed. I'm always grateful for every employee. I used to take it personal when people quit. I realized, look, I don't own these employees. They're here for as long as they want to be here, and we try to create the best environment for them to stick around long term. But I know most people don't want to be garage door repairmen. That's not their ambition. Hey, I'm going to be a garage door repairman when I get older.
Kept me fit and strong, I'll tell you that much.
Oh, yeah?
But I could see that destroying your back over time.
Yeah, it destroyed my back. I've got 2 discs that give me problems on a daily basis. It sucks. It's stressful too. I mean, you work a lot. It's unpredictable. It is. I did like the work because I like dealing with customers. I like meeting new people. I felt there's a sort of gratification when I show up at their house. I solve their problem. They're happy. I'm happy. We made some money. And you made a friend in some cases while you're there,
Yeah. I still go back and visit, actually, one of the customers that I had.
Nice.
Yeah, we hang out, and it's fun.
You build relationships with people over time, and that's like anything, a piece of advice I'd always give people is that relationships, someone always tell you, relationships, you got to make relationships with people, and I didn't get what they meant. I just okay, I say, yeah, okay, I'll make a relationship, but, as I've gotten older, relationships are key, whether you make a sale or not. If you go into any sales meeting, if you go in with the attitude, if I just want to make a friend, I don't want to make a sale. That's a good easy way, because people, when you talk about the word sales, you get commission breath, and
it's got a negative connotation for sure.
I mean, like, nobody, when you walk into the store and someone says, "Can I help you?" Most people are like, "No, thank you." right? Or I'm just looking, right? That's to me, that's kind of the fu, right? But I don't need that. But if that guy were to ask the question of like, hey, how's the weather outside? Would you answer him?
Yes.
Yeah, you probably would. And so there you're creating communication, and communication creates relationship, and relationship creates yeses. That's what you want. You want that yes, right? You want that yes. Let's get that yes. And give me that credit card, right? So that's a technique, right? But regardless if I get the credit card or not, I want to make a friend, and I could care less if they make the sale or not. So you have that attitude, and you just be an expert in what you do, or try to be at least the best expert that you can be, and you make a friend, because people have a hard time saying no to people they like and that they're friends. If your friend says, hey, you want to come over and you ain't got nothing going on, sure. But if you don't like that annoying friend and he's like, hey, you want to come over? I got something else going on, like not a good time, right?
Well, I appreciate you coming on the pod.
Yeah.
We're not the annoying friend yet.
No. I don't. I don't. I mean, I just let everyone be who they are, like they're. Unless when people are drinking, sometimes they can become annoying. I used to, as a former drinker, I know I like to talk, especially when I was drinking. I'd talk for hours. I'd talk all night, like 4 or 5 in the morning. Just poor somebody, whoever was there. I feel bad for them because now I know how they feel. But yeah, relationships are key. Believe in yourself, build yourself up, and you can be successful at whatever you do. Everyone wants to get rich quick. That would be nice, right? We'd all be signing up for that. But hard work, I feel I put at least, I put in a good 12 hard years in the company, and day to day, 6 days a week. And, 6 days a week was till I went to bed from when I woke up, because I'd get home, I'd have to do stuff around the house. I'd still have to, do stuff for the shop. I got employees coming in the morning. So it was just a lot. I got burnt out. And I read a book in 2017, somewhere around there. 8 years ago, I think. Well, it's got to be a lot more than that. It's like 6 years ago. What would that put it? 2018. I read a book. It's called The One Thing by Keller Williams. Keller Williams owns the real estate company worldwide, and the book is basically, he talks about focusing on one thing. Don't focus on 12 things. Another good thing is you could kind of put it like the nurse